Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Mary Grace, and it's a beautiful, albeit hot day here in Central Virginia. And we are coming to you with an excellent show today. This is not the first time our guest has been here, and definitely will not be the last. We are really, really privileged to have with us Dr. Troy Spurrill. He is a functional medicine physician, and he runs a wonderful clinic up in Minnesota, and it is Synapse Center for Health and Healing. Did I get that right? I always
Yeah,
wanna mess it up. Okay,
yeah.
Synapse Center for Health and Healing, official synapse.com, and it's SYNAPSE, just for those of you taking notes, official Synapse. Dr. Troy, we're gonna have a great conversation today. It's wonderful to have you here. Thanks for coming, and especially on short notice.
Yeah, absolutely. You caught me at a good time. I was just doing some other podcasts and interviews, and it lined up perfectly. So I'm glad
Okay,
to be here.
that's great, and, on a day like this, it's, like,
Yeah.
humid and hot, it's a perfect day. What's it like up in Minnesota? You guys in the 70s, 80s, or
We're
beyond?
actually hitting 91 today and humid.
Okay, yeah, same,
Yeah.
same, yeah, and we were supposed to have, I thought, a rainy-ish day, and we didn't actually it didn't happen. I'm not seeing any indication that we have people watching today, and I wonder if we are actually streaming. Hold on just a
Yeah,
second. This is a
absolutely.
little bit unusual, but not. It's unusual, but it's not. So let's just see what happened here.
They may actually be outside enjoying the weather.
No, I
No.
okay, yeah, there we go. I think maybe Restream is having issues. So let's do this, all of my listeners. If you're there, let us know you're watching wherever you're watching from. I'm gonna check the Rumble over here. This is highly unusual, but it's not. Like I said, it's some days are better than others when it comes to the interwebs, and it definitely okay, we do have some people on Rumble. So, good morning from South Dakota. We have Audrey loves Trump. Thank you, Mary Grace, for great content. Here we go. Boston, Audrey. Okay, so we do have some people watching. Please do me a favor, everybody. If you're on the Rumble, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. It's under the video. You won't see it in the live chat, but that is really important for helping us to get into the lineup, right? So that people can see us. It tweaks the algorithm and all that. Same thing on Facebook. I don't know what's going on Facebook. Oh, there's Sharon from YouTube. So we are out there. Okay, good. Joe is chiming in on Facebook. Facebook looks like it's going dark, and I don't have a view counter up here. So thank you guys. So the best thing you can do so that we don't feel like we're talking into the void is hit the hearts, hit the likes, do a subscribe thing. All that you can do will help us to see that you're actually there. And we've got Barley George doing noisy things in the background. That's our cat, my cat. If you hear him, just ignore. Okay. Um, Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Troy. The systems the systems are being weird. Maybe it's the heat. Here we go. We got our Facebook people coming in. So thanks everybody for being here. So Dr. Troy, I wanted to do a couple of things today. For my listeners, we are going to take some questions toward the end. So just jot down your questions. Hold on to your questions until we get a little closer so that we can see them in the chat. All right. But what I wanted to do was to get you to just give a little rundown of the medicine that you practice and how it's different from conventional. So if somebody goes to their conventional uh, primary care provider that's covered by insurance, that's in the big system versus going to you, what are they gonna see when they come everybody knows what happens when they go to their regular provider, but what about you? What's different?
So, couple things. I'm going to start with first of all, many years ago, actually 20 years ago, God put on my heart that I would be a part of a new healthcare system change, and I wrote it on my wall 20 years ago, and we're starting to see it. So I just want to lead with that. In traditional medicine, it's more of what we call a disease management system. So you go in and you get diagnosed with a disease, and then there's a medication, a prescription, or a referral, or surgery, sometimes PT that's recommended. And that's basically it. That's the majority of what they do. And I want people to really get this point. Insurance, if you think about it, insurance covers your car and the car when there's been damage done. Insurance will cover the house when there's been damage done to the roof or a flood or something like that. So health insurance is not any different. It's only going to cover, for the most part, when damage has been done. So they are more of a disease management. So there has to be an actual injury or problem in the body for them to cover it. What we do is called functional medicine. So we have a proactive model. I'll give you a perfect example. We're in Minnesota here. The Mayo Clinic is very, very big. I had a patient come to us, and she was in a wheelchair, and she said, I went to Mayo. They said, it looks like you're going to have MS, but you don't have it yet. So come back when you have it. Well, she was already in a wheelchair, but they couldn't actually have insurance pay them because there was an official diagnosis. So Mayo was actually being ethical with that, because they were saying you don't have the parameters that we need to see to give you the diagnosis. Therefore, there won't be any insurance coverage. So that traditional model is based off of insurance coverages. Now, here's the flaw. One of the flaws. Stanford University has over 102 sleep disorders that they've identified, but your doctors will only check for about 6, maybe 8, because that's all insurance covers. Sleep apnea, if they don't have a drug or they don't have a recommendation, they don't do anything with it. So 90% of those sleep disorders can be helped with diet and lifestyle. So in functional medicine, we take a look at what's not functioning. So mentally, chemically, physically, and spiritually, all those things can influence our health and our well-being. When there's a breakdown in communication in the body, that leads to dysfunction, and then dysfunction will create a symptom. Eventually, it'll become a disease. So the best way to combat disease is be proactive and actually get to it before it becomes a disease, which we know how to measure. We know how to find cancer 10 years before cancer is manifest and causing symptoms in the body. We do. It's just not paid for. We know how to find and look for autoimmune. It's really about identifying a breakdown in communication and then looking for the root cause. Oh, I think you're on mute.
So here we go. Okay, so let's say that we already have it, and my situation is a perfect one. I already have the problem, and we didn't prevent it because I didn't know even that it was a potential problem until it manifested in a very extreme way. So I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition that makes my body think that my thyroid is a foreign body, right? And so the my body is designed to attack foreign entities. And so my body creates antibodies that then come against my thyroid and prevent it from producing adequate hormones to govern many systems in my body. Did I explain that well?
Yeah,
Okay.
very well, actually. There
Okay.
is a little caveat. There's a new book out that I love called The Thyroid Debacle. And they talk about how it's not necessarily a confused immune system, more of the immune system's actually being told what to do to clean up things, and it's actually an appropriate response. So I'm going to
Okay.
generally kind of get to, like, if someone has a diagnosis like that, sometimes we can actually still make a difference by identifying the root cause, cleaning it up, and seeing what the body does. Sometimes we do have to rely on the traditional system still. The
Right.
traditional system should be a third tier system, though. Emergency medicine needs to stay the same. Emergency medicine is just elite, and we do very well with that. The ERs, the urgent care, it's excellent. When it comes to all of the diseases and disorders, we need to educate people on how they come to be so that you can prevent them. Number one. But if you already have it, which the majority of people we see already have a diagnosis, one like Hashimoto's, then you have to look at what are the root causes of that. There's only 8. There's only 8 root causes for something like Hashimoto. So I'll use that as an example. If you have a significant change in your hormones where it drops or goes too high. So things like pregnancy and menopause can actually trigger an autoimmune response. So that can be the triggering mechanism, but other things have to be in play. Number one, vitamin D has to be low. So vitamin D is the second one. If you have very low vitamin D for too long a time, that can cause the autoimmune. Now, the third thing that can be on the list, which is very interesting, is something like heavy metal toxicity. And interestingly enough, if you have too much lead in your body, it impairs your body's ability to absorb and use vitamin D. Isn't that interesting? So a lot of these 8 factors will feed off each other. The fourth one is stress. It's actually the most common. So that includes sleep disorders. So if you're not getting good restorative sleep, that's an accumulation stress disorder. If you have too much stress in your life for long periods of time, it can dampen your immune system response and cause autoimmunity, or it just takes a couple significant stressors, things like divorces, things like deaths, things that are just kind of shocking to us can definitely fall into that stress category. Fifth one, in other environmental toxins, pollutants. So things that our body doesn't know how to use. For example, all of our cells are broken down and built up. Red blood cells every 143 days. Other cells can be every 2 years. Some nerve cells every 6 to 7 years. Well, they're built back up with whatever we've been eating in the previous 7 years. So if we're exposed to things that are foreign to us, our body doesn't know how to use that to build new cells. And it treats it like a toxin and tries to detoxify it out of the body. So that can overwhelm our system. 6 is inflammation, just in general, where if you have too much inflammation for too long a period, that can also cause a really overburdening of your immune system. Your immune system basically helps you fight infection, manage inflammation, and escort the toxins out of your body. So if it's busy fighting inflammation, it could start to look at other things and make mistakes, if you will, or get confused when it comes to other parts of your body. And I just said number 7, which is infection. And that can be a big trigger for a lot of autoimmune. But again, these other ones require 1 or 2, especially the vitamin D, to be in play at the same time. And then blood sugars, when they go too high or too low, can also really create problems. And I'm going to throw out a special one, a 9th one, just for Hashimoto's. Iodine, when it is in excess, sometimes can cause problems, and iodine, when it's in deficient, can cause problems of the thyroid. But it's really the inflammation and infections that ensue because of the iodine imbalances. And a lot of the research that says that iodine in excess triggering the actual autoimmune is really bad research, because they use radioactive iodine in the actual studies. So it's like, yeah, let's nuke you and then see if this is bad for you and attach iodine to it and see if it's good or bad. It's horrible research.
Interesting. There's so much to unpack there. Okay.
Yes.
So for me, I've had this condition. It was identified in 2011. So for a while there, I was getting treated. It was identified by a traditional doctor, actually a psychiatrist, which is interesting.
Good catch.
Yeah, because I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who had a similar experience, she said, You gotta talk to this doctor. He's really helped me identify some chemical and hormonal imbalances that have contributed to my mental health, or opposite, right? And so when I saw him, he ordered the thyroid antibody tests, and that was really the first I had ever heard of that or understood it. And then from that point, he did prescribe some nutraceuticals, which was good,
Yeah.
some amino acids, and then also Synthroid, which is the synthetic hormone. And at first, that synthetic hormone helped me, and then it kind of wore off. The effects of it wore off. At least, the big outcome of that was that I knew I wasn't losing my mind. Because anybody, and I think to my listeners, especially women go through so many hormonal
Yeah.
changes that it really can be, it can feel like you're going crazy, and the people around you may think you're going crazy. And in fact, before we had a really good system of identifying this, I think a lot of women actually ended up in mental
Yeah.
institutions because of the types of behaviors that they exhibited, which really felt like they were beyond their control. Because that's what I felt like. I felt like I was outside of my body looking in and going, I don't have control over this. And then when you come out of an episode where you're just sort of raging or panicking or anxiety, you think, who was that and how did that happen to me just now? Because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And somebody today is listening to this and going, "Oh my gosh, that's me." And Hashimoto's affects more women than men in general, but
Yeah.
it's not exclusive. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, "Oh, wow, okay, what did she just say?" That is a good sign for you to pick up the phone and call Dr. Troy, um, so that you can identify and know for sure what's going on. And again, I can't diagnose, obviously, but at least do a discovery call with him and his team and go through those symptoms, and we'll get to that in just a minute. I want to do my disclaimer here, which is that, Dr. Troy is a doctor, but he's not your doctor, and he's not here to diagnose you or treat you uh, as an individual or even as a group here. And any questions that he answers are for informational purposes, not for diagnosis or treating of any disease or potential disease. So please just keep that in mind as we talk today. I'm being open about my situation because it's so universal, and a lot of people don't know they have it. And and so if it can help somebody, I want people to know that this is a possibility. Um, I want to go into this a little bit deeper because I want people to know that over time, I sort of fell away from the medication, and there were different reasons for that. But recently, I've had some things come up where I felt like it was important to address this again. And one of those was that I changed my diet pretty significantly and cut out sugar and grains and even nuts and inflammatory foods and went almost exclusively meat based with like high fat meat based. And I started putting on weight. And if you follow those ketogenic communities, you'll see that people actually lose weight or at least maintain if they're in my category. I'm a pretty small person and I wasn't obese to start with. So the idea of gaining weight was very scary to me. And so when I started asking around, and a lot of signs pointed to, if you have Hashimoto's, if your thyroid is off, that could be a contributing factor. And that is when I reached out to Dr. Troy, and it was pretty cool because I love the process of working with him and his team. It's very different from what you experience in a traditional medical setting. First of all, they go through a little intake process, which is not unusual. But then when you have your initial call with Dr. Troy, it's a 30-minute call. And he's going through question after question after question just so that he can get that baseline and understanding and a real history. He's getting a real history. Okay, when did you have trauma? When did you have stress, etc. And I forgot to tell him that I had like extreme COVID. That was just completely blanked from my mind. But apparently that was a factor. But the point is that from that point, once he took the history and ordered blood work and urinalysis, then the result so far was an exhaustive report, which goes into details. Is it like 30 pages? I can't remember.
37, well, it'll be
37.
33 to 40 pages on average, depending on how much
Okay.
data we we
Yeah,
find.
amazing.
It's a lot.
And
Yeah.
so you're not just getting the blood work in the mail and like a 3-minute phone call from the nurse at your doctor's office. You're actually getting a comprehensive, breakdown of everything that is discovered in that initial round. Now, I'm just in the initial phases here, and there's more to come. But for those of you listening and thinking, "Well, how is this different? Why should I call him?" That's a big difference right there, is that, it's individualized and he's not, like, looking at the clock every single minute that we're talking. So that's kind of what's going on. Um, and, so sorry, I've got my cat here. He's just not gonna leave me alone. Okay, guys, Barley wants to be here. Um, so that's what I wanted to kinda lay out for you guys. So Dr. Troy, we can use me as a case study.
Yeah, sure.
And so, the thing that you said that really struck me was okay, there's Barley. The thing is he weighs like 15 pounds. So, okay. Um, he's drinking my water. All right. So, um, the the thing that struck me when we were talking was um you said, "We're going to address how you're feeling right now. We're gonna address your symptoms, but we're not gonna stop there.
Yeah.
Once we get things managed to where you're feeling better and functioning better, then we're gonna really try to dial in to the root cause." And I've never had a doctor say that. And that's to me is the critical difference. So can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about what would be next for somebody like me? I've already had a bunch of people in the chat say, "My daughter has this, my daughter-in-law has this, da 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 da."
Yeah.
So I think this topic is really resonating, but it's not the only topic that would apply. We're
No.
just gonna use this as a case study right now.
Well, and to your point before, like 70 to 80% of women get this, 20% to maybe 30% men.
Okay.
And it's getting younger and younger and younger. It's one of the fastest growing conditions in the United States is autoimmune thyroid. And I'm just going to say this: we should never have people on thyroid medication if everything was working properly. So it is our world and our environment that's completely set this up. And 70% of women over the age of 40 are on thyroid medication. Think about that for a second. 70% of women over the age of 40. Something needs to be done. So let's talk about what that root cause might look like. And you mentioned Synthroid. I'm not against the thyroid medications at all. We use them in the beginning, but they're not the answer. So you have to be very, very careful with that. And specifically when you have autoimmune, if it's been going on a long time, a lot of times that comes with what's called leaky gut. And with leaky gut, then all of a sudden you can't tolerate certain foods like gluten and dairy, and you have to become a little more strict with those foods. Well, here's a little gem for people. You were put on Synthroid, correct? That itself has gluten in it. So the doctor who found it basically was ahead of his time. He was practicing as a psychologist, functional medicine, actually doing what he was doing, which is great. But that is step one. And Synthroid has gluten in it. So you have to make sure the person's not gluten sensitive, because then that ends up having a rebound inflammation effect. So it's all about going after those 8 different categories. So we do a lot
Mhm.
of questionnaires. We're big on questionnaires because if I send you a questionnaire that takes you 30 minutes, that is information that we tabulate. And then we ask very, very specific questions, and it allows us to get a picture of what's going on with you before we even talk. And then we can ask some clarifying questions. I've got great coaches that kind of dive into that stuff. The
Okay.
labs that we do, just to kind of paint the picture again for our baseline labs, the baseline lab that we ran with you always has the antibodies for the thyroid, because it's the most common autoimmune that we see in the United States, Canada, and even in North America. But our standard panel measures over 90 to 100 different parameters. That's why it generates a 37-page report. If you ran that same lab panel in the insurance world through Medicare, it would cost approximately $1,600 to $1,800 right now. And when we take insurance out of it and we just go to the lab directly, we negotiated with them a discount. And by taking insurance out of it, it drops it down to $250 from
Yeah.
$1,600. Big difference. And in nutritional medicine, they can't order that panel because you have to have a diagnosis linked to every lab order. There has to be a rational linking of that. And no one generally has all of those diagnoses. When we look at that big panel, we get a big picture of how your body is actually doing from a 20,000, 40,000 square foot view, mentally, chemically, and physically. When we add
Mhm.
our other questions and we start to zero in on, okay, what's the root cause? Was it a hormone thing? Was it an inflammation thing? Was it an environmental toxin, heavy metal thing? So we start to kind of check off the boxes of the 8 different triggers. And one of the things that, one of the reasons why the thyroid in particular gets really impacted, thyroid, the active thyroid is called T3. The 3 stands for 3 iodine segments. So iodine primarily only comes from the ocean. So what they found is that people that moved into middle America in particular weren't getting enough iodine. So they put iodine in salt. But then with all the cardiovascular on the rise, what they tell people to do? Avoid
Avoid
salt.
salt.
Yeah. So they don't put the iodine in the salt that they use on processed food. So basically, we are becoming iodine deficient. It's actually the most number one deficient mineral on the planet is iodine. It comes from the ocean. And so we need a lot of iodine. And iodine, funny enough, is what prevented COVID from really impacting and breaching our lung barriers. We used nebulized iodine all through COVID
Okay.
to block the transmission of the COVID by 94%. It reduced
Wow.
the transmission of COVID by 94%. To this day, that still was never reported in the news. The research was there.
Yeah.
We did it. A lot of other clinics did it, but that never made the rounds. And so a lot of the men and women who are deficient in iodine would have possibly had challenges with COVID as well. And there's so many other things that actually
That's
deplete our iodine.
that's interesting, because I mentioned that I had a pretty extreme case of COVID, and, I having Hashimoto's, right? You think about it, because I had already been diagnosed with Hashimoto's
Yeah,
before I got COVID, and so because I got it in 2021, so 10 years after being diagnosed, and, so my wheels are kinda turning here, just
yeah,
thinking about all the things that could have contributed, right? It's
yeah,
the body is so complex as
yeah,
well, and that's one thing that I'm taking away here is that when people, w when you encounter difficulties, sickness, disease, those kinds of things, there the expectation that has been set at a traditional medical practice is sort of like, um, a simple system that can be fixed with 1 or 2 visits.
yeah,
And what you're saying is that you're looking at the entirety, the body and the mechanisms and multiple factors that contribute to this. It's sort of like, um, renovating a house. And, when this is kind of what I'm seeing is that when anybody who's ever worked on a house, especially an older house, um, there's sometimes when you take something off or you think there's a problem, you think it's a simple problem, and then you maybe like, let's say with plumbing, okay? You take the faucet off and you go to change out a sink or a toilet or something, and then you find that there's maybe a crack in the floor. Right? And then you realize that there's probably gonna be some water that's leaking into the subfloor, and so there's all of these layers of issues that could be happening,
yeah,
and so as a functional medicine doctor, you are peeling back layers, whereas traditionally, if I went to a primary care provider, they would say, Hashimoto's, low thyroid function, here, take this.
Yep.
And occasionally they would give some supplements.
Yep.
That's really the comparison, I think,
Yep.
and then again, like, let's go back to the house renovation. There are people who would, even in spite of seeing the crack under the toilet and the leak into the subfloor, they would just put the new toilet on,
Yep.
put the gasket on, screw everything down, and walk away from it and go, "Okay, it's fixed."
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things is, so it does take time and careful observation
Mhm,
to get it right, to identify the root cause. So multiple touch points are needed.
mhm,
That's why we use coaches and check-ins and things like that to help with that process. And so uh, when you're looking for the root cause, it is like that onion layer, if you will. But we also have
mhm,
another saying. It is basically um, probability of summative potential, which basically is another way of saying is once you fix one thing and it starts working better, it's going to activate other systems in the body, and then you see where the next weakest point is. So that's why careful observation is always needed. If you fix a liver issue, the liver's job is to detoxify in the body, but it dumps it in the bowel. So if all of a sudden constipation ensues, you've got a bowel issue. So you've got to clean up the bowel stuff too while you continue to maintain the liver. And it really boils down to just maintaining foundational things of restoring the sleep, restorative sleep, restoring the gut, restoring your ability to detoxify properly, making good choices with what you put in your body and your mind, and then physically staying active enough to stimulate your cells and systems. And and when we have everything working and communicating properly, it works. You detoxify well, you sleep well, you can move well, you're happy, you're full of joy. There's different
mhm.
things start to come into being. And so it's complicated. The system is beautiful. We are beautifully designed, but the body gives us clues all the time. You just have to know how to read the book, so to speak.
Interesting. One thing that comes to mind as you talk about this, just being more active and, uh, having the system working optimally. Have you seen a big change in the past, I would say 10 years, of people leading way more sedentary lifestyles? Is that a big contributor?
Oh yeah, in the last 50 years, it's been absolutely a trend in that way, and the last 20 years, it's been problematic. So it's not
Mhm.
even the last 10 years. It's
Okay.
been going on for a while, and we've seen as technology has increased, sedentary lifestyle has increased. There was a time when I first started doctoring, we didn't have computers at
Yeah.
our desk. And so there wasn't we everything was hand charted, and you
Mhm.
you walked from different place to different place. I had to go to the library to do research.
Yeah.
And I'd spend a Saturday 8 hours in the library doing research and then order magazines that would get there a week later for me to go back and read the magazines, the journals, the medical journals.
Yeah.
So now it's all at a touch of a screen here. And so it's a very, very different world. We're much, much more sedentary. We eat fake food. We have a saying, if God made it, it's good. If man changed it, beware. And man has changed the majority of food.
Mhm.
So more things that we're exposed to are inflammatory. And we're really electric beings. We basically conduct electricity and currents. And there are great studies out there that show when, as an organ starts to fail, its millivoltage starts to drop. So it can't conduct a current as well.
Mhm.
And so our pH of our body, our acids, that's another form of inflammation, is just basically liquid conductivity. And so making sure that we actually stay healthy with that is very, very important too. So the electric currents, the EMFs, all the stuff around us, they do have an input. Our food, all of it has an input. We're more prone to dehydration and inflammation. So it's just it's a lot of things that kind of come at us, and there is a complete restructuring of our lifestyle that's needed because of technology. We're in that learning phase now. We now know how much technology has actually interfered with how we were created and how we're meant to live on the earth and in the earth here.
Interesting. Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed or heard a lot about is just the way that the light affects you from screens, and that's not something that we had 20 years ago,
No.
right? That it wasn't. So is that something that you're seeing a big change with as well?
Yeah, I work with some doctors locally here that are doing clinical studies, and one of them, he's a brain surgeon and was doing some really good work
Mhm.
on cancer cell lines, and he had a breakthrough, and he went to bring his phone out to send a message to say, I've had a breakthrough. This is amazing. And the cell phone, when he turned it on, negated the benefit, the readout on the machines in true time of the breakthrough that he was having. So I can't share the details of it. It had to do with the reactive oxidative species. And the bottom line is the number that he was reading on his machine was in
Mhm.
a good range. He took his cell phone out to make a text, and it dropped back into a bad range. And then he put the phone away, and it came back up in real time in the lab.
Okay, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I have a feeling as people are listening that people are kind of engrossed in what we're saying here. I want to let people know that this is the time. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. We're monitoring the chat here. If you have a question, just put 3 Qs in front of your question, Q, 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 so that we know that it's a question that you want to ask Dr. Troy. I'm watching on Rumble and I'm watching on Facebook. So we're gonna talk for a few more minutes here, and then we'll start answering questions. The time flies so
I
fast.
know.
I can't believe it. We're pushing an hour here and we really just got started. So think about it, everybody. What kind of questions do you have? We're gonna take a quick commercial break and then we'll come back and we will answer your questions. And please, if you haven't already, share this and let people know that they can come in and take part in the live Q&A. There's one commercial that's not on my round today that I want to remind people, and that is My Pillow. There are some incredible specials happening right now. Mike Lindell is just one of our favorite people. He's working so hard in the election integrity space, and he's lost a lot of business because of his willingness to stand for truth and to protect and preserve the American way. And so I want people to know, go to mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace. There's a lot available there. We have so many of their products. We love them. And everything that we have is super high quality. You really just can't go wrong. If you are looking to furnish a dorm room, just go there. You don't have to go to these big box stores and fight everybody else that's trying to furnish a dorm room. So just think about that, because it's almost time to take kids back to school, if they're doing that. And that's it. One stop, mypillow.com. Just get it shipped. You don't even have to like pack it in the car. Get it shipped to where your kid's going to live. Think about that. Apartment, dorm, weddings, graduations, all of that. Mypillow.com, promo code Mary Grace. And now let me go to this quick commercial. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Get your questions ready. I have Dr. Troy Spurrill, Synapse Center for Health and Healing. We'll be right back. Listen, your health is your best investment. We have a country to save, and we need people who are in the best shape of their lives, physically, mentally, spiritually. Why not connect with a team who cares about you on every single level from the inside out? Official Synapse is that team. OfficialSynapse.com. It's official, SYNAPSE.com. Tell them Mary Grace sent you, and they will treat you like family. If you're like most people, you really probably haven't thought about transferring your paper dollars into physical gold and silver. But I want to tell you a story. My friend Andrew Sorcini over at Beverly Hills Precious Metals, he recently went overseas and he wanted to buy a watch. He likes fine watches. He took 3 currencies with him. He took gold, he took Bitcoin, and he took American dollars. Now, there used to be a time when the American dollar was king. I remember that when I used to travel overseas. Everybody wanted dollars. The people that he was dealing with would not take his dollars because the dollar is so devalued around the world. They wanted the gold. So this is what I recommend to you. I want you to think about this. If you have cash in the bank, if you have an investment account that you have worked hard for years to accumulate, consider the value of converting that money into physical gold and silver. You're not buying something that's losing value. You're changing those worthless dollars into a tangible physical asset that will go up in value, which it has done historically. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to bh-pm.com. The first thing you're going to do is schedule that free consultation. Second thing, just think rationally about this, pray about it, go to the Lord, see what the best decision for you and your family is. I can't tell you that. I don't want to pressure you into that. What I do know is don't be scared, be prepared. And so the third thing you want to do is make a decision for you and your family. Make a decision, take action. bh-pm.com. Let them know Mary Grace sent you. When it comes to food, we really want to be aware of what is in the food that we're consuming. And that includes different types of technologies, jibber jabbers, technology that can alter your genetic makeup. And this is why we want to focus on American grown beef that isn't injected with things that you wouldn't put into your own body. We really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We saw 4 years ago what happened when the whole country shut down and people couldn't even go to the grocery store. We saw what happened when meat and other foods were rationed, and that could happen any day. We want you to be prepared. We want you to take action. And one of the best ways to do that is to secure food for yourself and your family. What better way than to go to griddownchowdown.com, use promo code Mary Grace, get a sustainable, reliable, shelf-stable source of high-quality American beef. All you do is go to griddownchowdown.com, tell them Mary Grace sent you, put your order in the basket and check out, and you're good to go. The other thing you can do is you can get a subscription. If you do a subscription, you're going to get this freeze-dried beef delivered to your door every month. And you're going to save a little bit while you do that. You're going to stockpile it, or you can just cook with it. Some people are just using it for their regular cooking. It's really up to you, but it's super convenient because it's freeze-dried and it's shelf-stable for 12, 15 years or more. Go to griddownchowdown.com and use promo code Mary Grace. I just want to give a shout out to everybody who watches this show. Thank you for being a participant. Thank you for being a loyal audience member. I just want to remind you, if you like what you've seen, please share this, and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and also sign up for my email list so you never miss a show. Okay, we're back. I'm Mary Grace, and I've got Dr. Troy Spurrill with me. We are here talking about functional medicine and getting to the root cause of illness. What is it that is actually going on? What's contributed to your illness? You have a diagnosis from a doctor, you have a potential diagnosis, maybe you've been given medication, and in some cases that's warranted. But what really is going on beneath the surface, and can it be reversed? And so this is what Dr. Troy Spurrill does at his practice, and this is something that they focus on and they emphasize. And so we want to take a couple of questions here, and I'm looking in the chat. I do want to give a shout out to Mary O'Grady Koch. She says, we're talking about my pillow because we talked about it before. I have many of the pillows and the bed topper and the slippers, love them all. So good job, Mary. Thank you for supporting my pillow. Let's look at Edme's question. She had a question early on. Okay. So can Dr. Troy's method reverse your Hashimoto's? So we're talking about the fact that I have Hashimoto's, autoimmune that affects my thyroid and other things. Can it be reversed? Please.
The answer is yes. We've had that, not with everyone.
Okay.
But yeah, it can be. We've seen that. So once damage is done, then we can't undo the damage with how we work right now. There are some things coming in the future in healthcare that are going to be very helpful with that, actually. So that'll be great. But yeah, we've had that many times. We actually have. I'll be presenting a case before South Dakota, the state board there, and doing some rounds in the hospitals here locally, presenting a case of Graves' disease she had antibody markers over 600. So they were very, very high. And within 6 months, we had all of her antibodies gone. And basically, she's been Graves free now for 2 years. So we're presenting that case. So we've definitely had successes. Where we've not had success, either people have not investigated, and truthfully, the number one reason for that is usually finances. It causes more stress. So if you don't have the time or the finances to actually look after and investigate the root causes, which I get, that's been problematic. And then sometimes there's permanent damage. So we've been able to reduce antibodies in pretty much everyone who follows the recommendations and programs. And we have hundreds of people who are antibody free a couple years after starting with us and improving all the systems that we find.
Interesting. I was told that once you have antibodies, that you always have antibodies,
Yep.
and that there's no way to reverse that, that you simply needed to take the medication to help the thyroid do its job.
Well, it's funny that they say once you have antibodies, you'll always have antibodies, but then they tell you need boosters vaccines because your body forgets how to make those antibodies. So
Okay.
it's common. It is. And that's
Mhm.
why having antibodies does not mean you have Hashimoto's. It means you have pre-Hashimoto's. So sometimes the antibodies will never go away, and that is true. And you can still have a good immune system.
Okay.
But if it's not attacking the thyroid, then you're good. And so managing it and
Mhm.
lowering the antibodies while keeping your general population of antibodies normal is actually possible. The sooner we catch someone as far as when the antibodies are made, the sooner that it can actually be reversed and helpful. And especially with Graves, there are certain antibodies that are just way more deadly and catastrophic because they can cause like a cardiac storm type issue. So
Okay.
getting those antibodies to go away is a much bigger deal and more life-saving.
Interesting. Okay, so that was a great question.
Yeah,
Uh, the next question, let
you
me
went
check
ahead of me.
Rumble. Okay, so that was a Facebook question. Let me equal opportunity. Um, uh, okay, Jana on Rumble, you missed the website for the precious metals. I'll put it in the chat here, so don't panic. Um, uh, Ms. Mar, um, on Rumble. What is the best way to combat inflammation associated with sarcoidosis, which is an autoimmune disorder? All right, so that's Mizmar on Rumble. You can't see that question. What is the best way to combat inflammation associated with sarcoidosis, which is an autoimmune disorder?
So there's a few things to start with. So inflammation in general, you want to make sure your omega-3 fatty acids are as high as possible. You want to make sure your vitamin D is as high as possible, and you want to make sure you're hydrated. Nothing puts out fire better than water. Now with sarcoidosis, we can have problems with the skin and the lungs, but the thing is you have to get the water to the area. So here's the challenge. If it's affecting the lungs, which if we did a deep dive into the sarcoidosis, we'd find out what body parts are all affected. But if it's on the skin, let's say, you have to sweat. So you have to get the water into the body, then out through the skin. So there's a lot of things you can do with that. If it's in the lungs, you have to make sure that you have water going in and blood and circulation going to the lungs. Well, the only way to do that is through exercise. So you actually do want to exercise. You want to push it a little bit where you get out of breath. Now, going up the stairs can get you out of breath.
Mhm.
Also, with sarcoidosis, the good thing is that we need high levels of melatonin. So melatonin is required for lung health. And so it's a very important hormone along with vitamin D, specifically with sarcoidosis. So you have to make sure melatonin, omega-3 fatty acid, vitamin D are at peak levels, and something called glutathione. It's an antioxidant that helps with detoxification. Those four things help with sarcoidosis quite a bit. Now, melatonin in particular, when when the lungs are involved, melatonin gets depleted when we have sleep disorders. It's the deep sleep hormone, but it's a very potent antioxidant for the lungs. Stress, infection, and inflammation in general convert the actual tryptophan that goes to serotonin, that then goes to melatonin. It'll convert that tryptophan into a quinolinic acid, which is a toxic acid for the nerves in the brain. So that's really the challenge, is to get that melatonin in there. So you have multiple things working against your inflammation once you have that sarcoidosis. I'm going to throw out one other thing. I'm going to let them do the research on their own with this. It's called MMS therapy.
Mm.
And it was around in the 70s. And it did wonders for low-grade infections. So people who got viruses, parasites, and other really tiny bacteria that tended to trigger things like sarcoidosis, MMS therapy has actually shown some benefit. There's an art to it. There's also a science to it, and you have to be careful and as far as processing it. But there's a lot of information that is coming out. More of it's coming out too. I'll say that. So
Okay.
we've been able to use that for a lot of problems like this.
Interesting. So you do offer that if somebody were to contact you
Yeah.
and set up a consultation, depending on if it's warranted.
Right.
For those of you who are just listening and you're not actually able to see the screen, I do have the contact information up here for Dr. Troy Spurrill. It's officialsynapse.com, official synapse.com. You can also call them. It's 651 209 9906, 651 209 9906. So, just in case you aren't seeing the screen, I wanted to make sure that you get that information. The person that asked about the gold and silver, I'm just going to pop that up here. It's Beverly Hills Precious Metals Inc. It is bh-pm.com, bh-pm.com. As always, every time you go to one of these links, please put my name in, Mary Grace. Tell them that Mary Grace sent you so that they can know how to apply the referral code. All right. So, next question. These are great questions. And I've got over here on Facebook, I have Patty. Is Armor thyroid medicine better than synthetic medicines?
The answer is yes, but we will also use other forms to support the thyroid. And our goal with thyroid is to not have you on medication at all. So we're about 94% of our patients that we work with, they get off their thyroid. So if they don't have a thyroid, then that never happens, because sometimes you have to remove the thyroid, or the medical people have removed the thyroid. But we will use Armor Thyroid, and we'll even use levothyroxine on occasion, and Synthroid on occasion, to get people to a certain spot while we work on the root cause problem. So our patient base, and I will say this, sometimes we have people who we find what their rates are and what they need, and they just need a break from going after their health for a little bit, if you know what I mean. Like, sometimes people have been doctoring and working on stuff for so long, they just need a break. And so we will also take that into account, and have them just be stable, and then give them 6 months or a year, and then go after the root cause. So yeah.
That's me. I'm in that category because I've had so much going on,
Yeah.
whether it was like so many of those factors that we talked about that contribute to the actual illness. I guess I scored pretty high on that list.
Yeah.
So you kind of have me in that category of let's just get you stable
Yep.
and then we can go after the root cause.
Yep.
And I'm okay with that because I do want to get this stable and under control. All right, we have another question here on Facebook that from Susan. If I had radioactive iodine for hyperthyroid years ago and now I'm hypothyroid, what can I do? So
Oh,
if we're looking at root cause, that would be a toxin, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason why they use the radioactive iodine is to actually poison part of your thyroid. So it's basically a treatment to kind of to stop it from working. And so it
Wow.
depends again at what the original cause was. If it was a stress response, if it was an environmental toxin like pesticides, are notorious because they mimic estrogen. Estrogen will displace iodine when it's being transported away from the gland. And so when we see that, if the root cause has been addressed, the actual answer is iodine because you want to actually boost more things. Let me read, I'll read a short list here. For you
Okay.
to make iodine properly as a hypothyroid, this is what you need. Iron. So women with anemia, which is very common, don't make enough thyroid. So iron, iodine, like I said, it's made from iodine, tyrosine, which is an amino acid, zinc, which that when we have chronic stress, we deplete our zinc and our stomach needs it. Selenium, vitamin E, B2, B3, and B6, and then vitamin C and vitamin D. Radiation actually inhibits the ability to make thyroid hormone. That's why I don't know if people remember when Japan had that radioactive incident, maybe 8-10 years ago now. The entire west coast of the United States, they handed out iodine pills for people because the radiation that came over the ocean from Japan because of the winds would affect their actual thyroid levels.
Wow.
And in fact, we saw even with people taking the iodine, it wasn't quite enough. With a lot of people, we saw an explosion of thyroid issues, and that was a significant radiation exposure. But so many people have other radiation exposures from different sources. So
Okay. That's wow, interesting. I want to hear from my California and West Coast people. Did you did you receive iodine
yeah,
from the state, from the local health authorities when that happened? I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I don't remember being handed iodine, but I do remember that was a concern. Um, okay, so here's the next question from Eileen. We're going to take this, and then we're going to take one more question. Uh, Eileen, I am 65 and have been on Synthroid for 25 years for borderline hypothyroidism. My doctor just does one test and said that my level is normal. I asked if I could taper off the med, but he refused. He says it's the med that is keeping it normal. Can I use a natural supplement and try tapering off? Eileen, it sounds like you need to set up a consultation with Dr. Troy. But let's see what he says.
I love this question because this is my big pet peeve. And keep in mind, medical doctors, the majority of my best friends right now are all medical doctors. So I say this with a loving heart towards the industry, but all that doctor is doing is saying that it's keeping the lab normal. It's keeping the TSH normal. It doesn't matter if the TSH is normal, abnormal. How do you feel? How do you feel on it? Don't treat the lab when it comes to thyroid. The recent research is showing that the lab values for thyroid are basically different depending on what part of the country you live in. So it doesn't really matter. Number one. Number two, they base the entirety of their decision making on prescription off of TSH. That's the thyroid stimulating hormone, which is the gold standard in the traditional medical world for pathology. And that's right. That's accurate. But there are multiple other markers. You have TSH being stimulated from the brain, thyroid stimulating hormone. It goes down to stimulate the hormone to make T4, inactive thyroid. T4 gets converted to T3, active thyroid. So when we actually do testing, we test TSH, we test T4, and then what's called free T4 that's available to be used, and then T3, and then free T3, and then you have something called reverse T3. Reverse T3 blocks the thyroid at the cells in case you have something like an accident, trauma. So if you're hit by a car and you're bleeding, your thyroid shuts everything down so that you don't use your muscles and you focus all your energy towards healing and recovery. So trauma can do it, but so can things like environmental chemicals and stress. And so if your reverse T3 comes up too high from natural infection, inflammation, it's blocking your thyroid. Your TSH could be 100% normal, but your function
Yeah.
in the body can be abnormal. The reason why there was a book written maybe 12 years ago called why are my thyroid labs normal? Well, why do I feel sick when my thyroid labs are normal, basically? And so in that book, it talks about how all of these doctors are basing their treatment off of the lab, not on how you're feeling. I've even had people come in and the doctor, they're overweight, they're eating the same, they've gained 30, 40 pounds, and the doctor says you have hyperthyroid based on the TSH. And they're like, what are the symptoms? Well, symptoms are underweight, thinning hair, anxiousness. And they're like, no, I'm depressed, I can't get off the couch, and I'm gaining weight. It's the exact opposite. They say, well, you have the symptoms of hypothyroid, but the labs say you have hyperthyroid, so you have hyperthyroid. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Okay, we have one more question, and that is from Sylvia on Facebook. Should I take Armour Thyroid if I have no thyroid? Currently taking levothyroxine.
No, if you have no thyroid, you have to go based off the T4, T3. So that's a different scenario. And so it's very important to stick with what your doctor, the traditional endocrinologist, will get it right. You have to go off of your symptoms. When you've removed your thyroid or they've removed your thyroid, you have to go off the labs and how you feel. So that's a good follow-up question to that. And I just saw Edmi pop one other question up there about the kinds of antibodies. I forgot, like in the testing for the antibodies,
Okay.
the T3, T4, we're testing for TPO and TGA.
Okay.
So thyroid peroxidase antibodies and thyroglobulin antibodies. And
Okay.
then there's one called TSI or the transport globulins for Graves.
Okay.
So that's a different one for Graves'
Okay.
disease. But yeah, that
Okay.
was an important little add-on question there.
This is very valuable, and I hope we're getting good feedback in the chat. People are saying this is great information. The interwebs are not doing a great job of getting this show out today. So I am depending on all of you. If you're coming back for the replay, please leave a comment, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the hearts, and that is one really good way to get this out in the algorithm, regardless of what platform you're watching on. Another way to get this information out is to copy the link and then share it. Send it in an email to somebody, paste it into a text message, a direct message. Those are ways that you can get this information to people. It's such valuable information, and Dr. Troy is giving us his time today to make sure that people know that they have alternatives, and there really are alternatives out there. And so I do encourage you to get in touch with him. The initial consultation, there's no charge for that. They're going to do an intake just to see if it's going to be worth your time and worth their time to bring you in as a potential patient. It's not a high pressure situation. You're going to be given options once you go through the process of understanding what's actually going on with you. And so some people don't even know what's going on. Some
Yeah.
people, you're sitting here and you're thinking, this really sounds familiar. I don't have a diagnosis. And this could be what gives you the answers. We can't tell you that unless you go through the process, though. So please go to his website, officialsynapse.com. And the number again there is area code 651-209-9906, 651-209-9906. That's the phone number. Let them know that Mary Grace sent you. Is there anything that you want to end with today, Dr. Troy, for our listeners here? We've had great questions. I appreciate everybody being here. And we want to make sure that you guys are encouraged.
Well, I'm just very much about a proactive approach, and I'm very thankful for yourself and a lot of the other what I'm going to call patriots and freedom fighters, people that are putting out the information. And I'm in being part of this group. I've been fortunate and blessed to be treating a lot of them and taking care of the people who are taking care of getting truth and information out to the world right now. I know you know a lot of them, the people that I work with,
Yeah.
and I'm just seeing a shift and a change. So I want to encourage people that there's so much you can do about your health, and it's time to regain control, not just of our country, but of our bodies and our health, and start making decisions now that affect us, but again, our kids and our grandkids, because we're seeing disorders and diseases that grandparents used to get in now the younger and younger generations. Diabetes was something that people got in their 60s and 70s when I first started.
Mhm.
Now we have 8-year-olds getting type 2 diabetes. So that means they've aged their cells to that of a 50 or 70-year-old in 8 years. We've got to make some changes.
It's
There
crazy.
is a new healthcare system coming. We're not getting rid of all of the old. We're just going to get it better, get the corruption that's part of it out of there, get the areas that are compromised out of there, and then bring the power back to the people as far as their own health and their decision making. And when you stop putting money towards things that are actually making us sick, then you're going to see even bigger changes. And so, yeah, this fall we've got a big election coming, and I'm working with Trump's people on what a potential new healthcare system would look like. So I
Yeah.
want people to really, I want them to be optimistic, but we need change, and we need to go after this at a big level as well. But it also starts with you at the cellular level, what's going on with you. So we need the healthiest version of all of us possible.
I love that. We really do. And we're doing everything we can to for all of you to make sure that you have access to this information. And it's a blessing to be able to have a show like this, to give people this type of information. And this is why I keep asking you to spread it far and wide. Unfortunately, when I am on certain social media platforms, they don't actually want you to know that there are alternatives, and we've actually gotten in trouble with certain platforms for talking about certain alternatives. And as I always say, if the big agencies are telling you it's bad, then the opposite is most likely true. And this is one such case. Getting to the root cause, having really good metabolic health, um, being active and being able to participate actively in society is something that the people who are working against us are very much opposed to. And so as you have concerns for the future, for yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren, for what is happening, this is a big, big part of it. And I always say, put on your own oxygen mask first. And
Yeah.
some of you in the chat are saying, "Hey, my daughter needs this. My daughter-in-law, my niece," and that's because you're a mom and you want your child to do well. But my guess is that you might need something too. So think about how you can be your best and strongest self. I really do mean that, because I fall into that category as well, that I'm taking care of other people,
Yeah.
and it's so important for me to take care of me. It's not selfish. It is actually going to be a life-saving thing for the people in my life that I love. And that's really what's key. In case you missed it, I wanted to let you know that I had a fantastic interview that I posted on all of my channels last week. It was with a woman named Mimi. So if you go back and look, I really want you to get that, because she had some very devastating diagnoses, and she has made some significant changes and came back from the brink of death through really choosing to live, and then also making significant changes to the way that she eats and to her approach to wellness. And that was it was a week ago that we aired it, and it's on all of my channels. And then also next week, a week from now, at 1 o'clock, I have one of your favorite favorite people coming on for a live interview. So please bookmark that 1 p.m. on the 20th. He will be on the show. And you know how it is. We don't spill the beans too much because of the way that things work, the little gremlins that are crawling around in the interwebs. So we appreciate all of you, and we want to thank you. Kat in the house had a question, and I'm not I answered it, I think, but basically, Kat, I do believe that Dr. Troy's team could work with you, even if you have no thyroid. I don't think that disqualifies you. I think it actually makes you a prime candidate for working with his team. So
Yeah.
everybody have a great day, and I will be back here soon. And I appreciate all of the support. Please subscribe, like, follow, do all the things. Get on the mailing list because that's how you get notified before we have a show coming up. And that's at marygracemedia.com. You can also shop and support all of the America First companies that we have featured on my website over there at marygracemedia.com. Everybody have a great day. And thank you again, Dr. Troy Spurrill, officialsynapse.com, for being on the show. Listen, your health is your best investment. We have a country to save, and we need people who are in the best shape of their lives, physically, mentally, spiritually. Why not connect with a team who cares about you on every single level from the inside out? Official Synapse is that team. Officialsynapse.com. It's official, synapse.com. Tell them Mary Grace sent you, and they will treat you like family. If you're like most people, you really probably haven't thought about transferring your paper dollars into physical gold and silver. But I want to tell you a story. My friend Andrew Sorcini over at Beverly Hills Precious Metals, he recently went overseas and he wanted to buy a watch. He likes fine watches. He took 3 currencies with him. He took gold, he took Bitcoin, and he took American dollars. Now, there used to be a time when the American dollar was king. I remember that when I used to travel overseas. Everybody wanted dollars. The people that he was dealing with would not take his dollars because the dollar is so devalued around the world. They wanted the gold. So this is what I recommend to you. I want you to think about this. If you have cash in the bank, if you have an investment account that you have worked hard for years to accumulate, consider the value of converting that money into physical gold and silver. You're not buying something that's losing value. You're changing those worthless dollars into a tangible physical asset that will go up in value, which it has done historically. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to bh-pm.com. The first thing you're going to do is schedule that free consultation. Second thing, just think rationally about this, pray about it, go to the Lord, see what the best decision for you and your family is. I can't tell you that. I don't want to pressure you into that. What I do know is don't be scared, be prepared. And so the third thing you want to do is make a decision for you and your family. Make a decision, take action. bh-pm.com. Let them know Mary Grace sent you. When it comes to food, we really want to be aware of what is in the food that we're consuming. And that includes different types of technologies, jibber jabbers, technology that can alter your genetic makeup. And this is why we want to focus on American grown beef that isn't injected with things that you wouldn't put into your own body. We really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We saw 4 years ago what happened when the whole country shut down and people couldn't even go to the grocery store. We saw what happened when meat and other foods were rationed, and that could happen any day. We want you to be prepared. We want you to take action. And one of the best ways to do that is to secure food for yourself and your family. What better way than to go to griddownchowdown.com, use promo code Mary Grace, get a sustainable, reliable, shelf-stable source of high-quality American beef. All you do is go to griddownchowdown.com, tell them Mary Grace sent you, put your order in the basket and check out, and you're good to go. The other thing you can do is you can get a subscription. If you do a subscription, you're going to get this freeze-dried beef delivered to your door every month. And you're going to save a little bit while you do that. You're going to stockpile it, or you can just cook with it. Some people are just using it for their regular cooking. It's really up to you, but it's super convenient because it's freeze-dried and it's shelf stable for 12, 15 years or more. Go to griddownchowdown.com and use promo code Mary Grace. I just want to give a shout out to everybody who watches this show. Thank you for being a participant. Thank you for being a loyal audience member. I just want to remind you, if you like what you've seen, please share this and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and also sign up for my email list so you never miss a show.